to the CV story journey. So fresh faced, you've packed in the horses, the skates have been hung up. You've now got a massive pair of front row boot cleats with 8-inch studs.
Yeah.
Your journey's changing. You've got a bag of Timbits for the plane. You make your way over to Scotland. How did that feel when you were? What made your decision to move to Scotland and come across? And
Well, I worked, so I didn't actually come over to Scotland to play rugby at all. Um I had been obviously on a tour to Ireland, knew that I wanted to come back over here. I didn't know where. I just knew that I wanted to come back. One of my friends, when I was working the summer camp, years later, he was from Glasgow and he was getting married. So he invited my friend and I over to his wedding. So we went to his wedding and then we backpacked around the UK for about 2.5 months. And like Glasgow was always kind of where I would come back to as like the main hub. And
the base, yeah.
yeah, it just kind of felt like home. Like I've always traveled around. I do love where I grew up. I obviously like value where I grew up so highly because it is where I became who I am. But I always wanted to travel more. I always felt like I had like itchy feet is how I describe it. Like I would never be settled somewhere. Like I'd go and travel somewhere, stay for 8 to 10 months and be like, okay, like where am I going next? But Glasgow was like where I felt like home. So went back to Canada after that little travel trip, was able to get my Irish passport because my grandma was born in Dublin. So then about a year and a half later, I came back over here thinking like I'll just live in Glasgow, work in whatever capacity that looks like, probably hospitality, because at this point I hadn't gone to university yet. I was thinking like I'll just obviously then like the UK and Europe are much more accessible because Ryanair makes flights much cheaper. That like it's much easier to go to Italy from Glasgow than it is to go to Italy from Canada, right? So
Yeah.
I was thinking I'll just live and work. My friend, the same friend, had come over with me. She was on a visa for 2 years, and so after about the first like year and a half of being here and just working in restaurants, and that kind of being my existence, I was like, I need to broaden my horizons because if you've ever worked in hospitality before, you'll know that you're drinking as much as you're working. You're not really like living the best lifestyle. Like my mental health definitely wasn't in a great spot, but it like was only because I was literally working for 12 hours and then drinking a lot and then working again at 10 a.m. Like that was a vicious cycle of just like feeling like absolute garbage. So I was thinking I need to find friends that um, are going to help me break that cycle and hopefully get me more active. So I just Googled rugby clubs in Glasgow. Carthage was the closest one. It was within walking distance. So that's where I ended up. And obviously, like rugby clubs also have a reputation for peers as well. But it also meant that I was more active. So started playing there and just settled in. Like, and it just became more of my life here. Like it made me feel like I actually was forming a community and forming a life here rather than just like being here working
Yeah.
to live. I actually was like making friends that I knew I was going to see if they left the club. You know, a lot of times in jobs, you have work friends, not like real friends. Whereas like within the club, like, I was actually like becoming a part of something. So that was a big thing for me.
Oh, that's class. You're talking to a 6-year hospitality vet here as well. I've done the 3 a.m. drinking, knowing full well your shift starts at 11 a.m. the next day.
Yeah,
Like
not
you
a good
said, it can become a vicious cycle. That is,
yeah.
it's like you said, you do get some pretty strong friends out of that. But as you said, once you leave that job, they tend to disperse.
Yeah.
And then rugby friends, they obviously. Do you still get to visit Carthage a lot? Do you still get to go up and chat?
I've not been in a while. Like I would actually like to go back and see them soon. I'd not been back for ages because when COVID hit and we were still training with the Scotland squad, we had to be so careful about crossing those bubbles. And then I moved to Loughborough. So it's been wild to not go back and see everyone. I got to go back. My mom came to visit in November before we played Japan. And I actually went down to Carthage a few days before we went to camp and got to watch them play, which was really good. So I was only there briefly and saw a few of the girls that I like played with. But I would like to go back for like maybe not to run around in a session, but at least to like say hi,
Yeah.
just like
There
see
for
every
there for touch rugby at the start, that's it.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I've rolled my ankles on those pitches more times than I'd like to admit, so I'll probably just like stand and watch. But yeah, I do love it down.
One of those classic pitches that somehow has a hill in it, but it's still
It
deemed
does. It
acceptable.
has a legitimate hill. That's the thing. Like you're saying that, but like anybody who's played at Carthage knows that it has a hill. It's ridiculous, but it's part of its charm.
I know, it makes it feel unique. Everybody has their own unique quality.
Yeah,
It's like ours back home. Some reason somebody put the post right in front of a river, so every time somebody kicked a goal, the ball would go in the river. So
amazing.
like the lifeguard nets they
Yeah,
have.
yeah,
Like ours is the only rugby club that has three of those by the pitch, ready for someone. Like and like a local
amazing.
volunteer has to go and fish the ball out every time.
That's amazing.
Exactly, part of Scotland's charm. If people wonder why rugby in Scotland is that, it's because it's like that.
Yeah,
The only time flipping a coin to see which way you start actually matters because you think,
yeah,
but that's uphill, so we want to do that first when we're still
yeah.
got energy.
Exactly, exactly.
So we're going to move on to the bit now. You've been here, you've been with Carter for a while. Talk to me about what it was like when Scotland finally came knocking and they went, "You're pretty good at what you do, actually. Any chance you got some Scottish blood in there? We see the Irish passport. We're
Yeah.
kind of
Well,
like Ireland, but rainier, you know."
well, I don't think they came knocking on my door. I think I was kicking down their door first and making it very clear that I wanted to play. Um, so when I was playing at Cartha, there was a couple coaches there that were like, we should just see, like, if you're eligible to play for Scotland, would you want to? And I was like, well, yeah, like, I'm not going to say no. Like, if I might as well just try. If the opportunity is there and I can do it, then like, obviously that's an insane opportunity. But if you don't ask, you don't know. Um, and so one of the coaches was a development officer at the time, I think. And so he kind of put my name in the hat. And so I got invited to a sevens camp because that was the only thing that they had going on in the summer. And it was just opportunity for the coaches there to kind of see what I was about. Like, it's not at that point even.
Was this while you were still playing centre? Sorry to butt in. Was this when you were still playing
I think
centre?
I was playing back row at that time.
Right,
Like, but I mean, I was not a sevens player, but they knew that. Like, that was like my one saving grace going in was like,
right.
I'm not trying to be a sevens player.
I'm
Maybe
here. I'm here to rock. That's all I'm here
unless
to do.
someone wants to. No, but I it was more just like to see, I guess, like my how I would work. Like work ethic is a huge thing, right? Like, I might not be sevens fit, but like if I'm willing to throw up,
Yeah,
then maybe, So went, had a little trial. The coaches said that obviously I had done a good job and think that I would be a good fit and it would be worth kind of investing more time in me. So then I got invited to some camps for the autumn. And then the week before I was supposed to go to my first camp, this was when Shade was still the coach for the women. I
oh
ended
yeah,
up tearing my meniscus. So I had to have surgery. And so then I was out of training for like 6 or 8 weeks. So I missed like that whole kind of chunk, which was obviously really frustrating. But then after that, I was still kind of like my name was kind of still in the hat because I hadn't done anything wrong, right? Like
yeah,
I didn't pull out voluntarily. It was I had an injury. So then we had a new coach come in and he brought me back in and I ended up being selected for the tour to South Africa. And that's where I got my first two caps. And that's when I was still playing like second row or back row. Um, and yeah, that's kind of where the whole like journey kicked off. And then I I didn't really see that much time on the pitch until I started playing front row. So that's been like very transformational for me in terms of like the impact that I can have on the squad. But like my first season was huge because it I was still being selected. So I was still a part of everything for like autumn tests and Six Nations, but I was often like 24th man. So I'd be with the
yeah.
squad, but I wouldn't be selected, which is like it was obviously very frustrating and like very annoying. And sometimes you're on the bench and you don't get put on. But that's like a part of performance sport. So it was kind of balancing like being annoyed by that because you're a competitive person, you want to play, and also recognizing like you have to kind of earn your stripes and you still have a role within that team. So regardless if you're playing or not, like there are so many other girls that would have wanted to be in my shoes where I was anyways. So I'm not going to sit there and be bitter about it. Like I still have opportunity to be getting better with every camp that I'm invited to. So um the first year was a bit of like a roller coaster in terms of like being patient and being
Hmm.
annoyed But then I had some good talks with our coaches, and our S&C coach thought that trying to move me into the front row would be worth a shot, and it turns out that it was, and here we are. So it's been a wild ride.